Good morning, everyone. Great to see you. We're going to be going back to that Sermon on the Mount. So if you've got a Bible, could you just have it open at Matthew chapter 5, 968 in the church Bibles. You will need a Bible today because we're going to kind of track through a few places, so it would be great if you've got scriptures in front of you, and if the person sitting next to you hasn't got a Bible, being around Jesus most of the time will be a pretty exciting experience. If you just look at the little section before Matthew 5, Jesus has been kind of moving through this territory, and people have been amazed at what they've seen. The demons have been sent packing, people have been healed. It has been a very exciting time. And now he heads up a mountain and he sits down and he calls a group of pretty ordinary people around him. A few fishermen, a few peasant farmers, just a little bunch of ordinary blokes. And as Andy explained to us, there's a kind of crowd at the back who are watching this. They've been waiting for something really exciting to happen. And you have to say, as you kind of listen to Jesus speak, it all becomes a little bit underwhelming. Talks to these ordinary guys and says, happy are those who know they've got absolutely nothing in the spiritual realm. They're just spiritually bankrupt people. Happy are those who get really upset about that, mourn over their spiritual bankruptcy. People who don't cover up by pointing the finger at other folk and saying, do you see what he's like? But are marked by meekness, just not shooting their mouths off. And are not desperate to see their fishing businesses grow and become prosperous and get big houses, but they are hungry for righteousness. Happy Jesus is happy. Now, if you've been kind of there at that point, you might we'll go home. And then Jesus says something, and this is what we're going to be thinking about today, that we'd have had the crowd, I think, nudging each other and saying to one another, I think he's joking. Because then he looks at this little group of ordinary people, this bunch of fishermen, blokes from the countryside, and he looks straight at them and he says, you in particular, you alone are the salt of the earth. Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. And then he adds to that something even more incredible. He says, you, would you believe it? You are the light of the world. Now, I don't find it amazing. The Bible says big things about Jesus. He is the Son of God and he does amazing things. I do find it extremely surprising when it comes and points its finger at people like you and me and says, you're the salt of the earth. Now notice, he's not telling them to be something. He's not saying, hey guys, you're going to need to improve your performance. He's telling them who they are. You are the light of the world. People who are poor in spirit, people who mourn over their sin, people who are meek, people who are hungry and thirsty for righteousness. It is no surprise that Jesus brings the kingdom to bear on this world, and you see it in his miracles and in what he does. That is no surprise at all. It is a massive surprise when Jesus tells us that you will see the power of the kingdom in the lives of these people who are poor in spirit, who mourn over their sin, who are meek, and who love righteousness. That is a huge surprise. Now notice also that it comes with a little warning. So Jesus is saying to these guys, and we're just about taking it in, and he adds this warning. Salt that becomes tasteless is useless. Light that is concealed is useless. People who are merely Christians in name, who go to church, who show up on religious occasions, who can do the talk, who can sing the songs, if that is all that we are useless. That's what I thought. We only have one use. We only have one use. Salt only has one use. Light only has one use. Christians only have one use. So what does it mean to be salt and light in the world? I think that's a burning question for us. We've got to understand what he is talking about here when he tells us who we are. Now, as Andy explained to us last week, when you read the Beatitudes, you've got this description of these people who are at a loss, poor in spirit, mourning, meek, people who are hungry for righteousness. And then there's this kind of overflow that pours out their lives. This is what comes out, their lives. They are merciful. They are pure in heart. And they are peacemakers. If you want to be salt and light in the world, that's how it shows itself. This is how it appears. This is how it makes its presence felt. Mercy, purity, peace, love. Okay. Now, actually today, we're only going to look at the first word. You don't need to know this, but when I was preparing this week, I thought I knew what this passage was all about, and it all worked out, and then I went, oh dear. There's a lot more to it. Okay, so all I've got for you today is the first word. So we're going to think about being called to be salt in society and light in the world as it expresses itself in a merciful life. Okay? I'm trying to show you how that works. So we're going to skip. I'm going to walk you through a few passages in Matthew. Just got to turn over a few pages. I'm going to see how this works in practice. So turn to chapter 8 for me. And we're going to look at 28 to 34. So just after the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus crosses the lake. He goes to the other side. There's a place called the Gadarenes. So look at Matthew chapter 8, verse 28. When he arrived at the other side in the region of the Gadarenes, 2 demon-possessed men coming from the tombs met him. They were so violent, no one could pass that way. What do you want with us, Son of God? They shouted. Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time? Some distance from a large herd of pigs was feeding. The demons begged Jesus, if you drive us out, send us into the pigs. He said, go. So they came out and went into the pigs, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and died. Those tiny pigs ran off, went into the town and reported all this, including what had happened to the demon-possessed men. Then the whole town went out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they pleaded with him to leave the region. Goes across the Sea of Galilee, gets to the other side, Gadarenes, Gentile territory, mostly Gentile territory. That's why they've got the pigs. Jesus won't keep pigs. And there's these demon-possessed men. There's a kind of no-go area around them. You don't go anywhere near these guys. They're violent. They'll kill you. This is a dark, desolate place. They keep pigs there because that's just what you do with a dark, desolate place. And Jesus goes there. Right? And then, as the king stepping onto the shore, seeing the opposition, he just commands it to get out. Demons are driven. They go. And these men are transformed. It's a moment of illumination. It's great, bright illumination. The king has arrived. He's come to establish his rule. He has mercy on these tortured individuals. But look at the sequel. Look what happens next. Okay. These guys are there. They're sorry. And the town council comes out to him and says, excuse me, would you please leave? The light goes on, and people go, it's too bright. Get out. See what's happening? Edinburgh Town Council is not going to come to 20 schemes to Mes McConnell and say, we've got a real problem with people dying of drug overdoses. Please, can you help us? That is not going to happen. Ever done someone a favour and be met by ingratitude? What do you do? Jesus doesn't respond indignantly. I'm going to give you a little sequel to that. It's Mark's Gospel. When they tell him to go, one of the men who's been demon-possessed comes to Jesus and says, "Can I come with you?" And he says, "No, don't come with you. Go home and tell your family and your friends how much the Lord has done for you and how he's had mercy on you." And the man goes and he tells everybody. In other words, Jesus doesn't get back on the boat in a kind of grumpy spirit, shaking the dust off his feet, going, "I'll go there again. I went through with these guys. They've had their chance. We're off." He mercifully perseveres. Think of people who annoy you. Ask yourself how you react. Measured, mean, mouthing off. The light shines in merciful behavior. The light shines in merciful behavior. Turn to chapter 12. Chapter 12, verse 1. At that time, Jesus went through the cornfields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some ears of corn and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath." And then he tells them about an incident from David's life when he ate the bread in the temple. So look down at verse 6. "I tell you that something greater than the temple is here." And this is the punchline. "If you had known what these words mean, 'I desire mercy, not sacrifice,' you would not have condemned the innocent." So it's the Sabbath day. The disciples are hungry. They pick some ears of corn. You saw the picture, haven't you? That these guys are going through, and then these kind of Pharisees kind of pop up. Hey, that's not allowed. They've got all these rules that they've added on to the fourth commandment. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, that's the commandment. And then they've got all these regulations about what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do that they've added on to the commandment. And Jesus references David and he speaks these words, "I desire mercy, not sacrifice." The people Jesus spoke to were the self-appointed judges. You read the Gospels, they go through, they go out. They might hear carrying your mat on a Sunday, stop it. I've just been healed. It's a lame beggar. This man told me to pick up a mat. Yeah, you just stop carrying the mat. Or a blind man, where they have a bit of an inquiry into, and when they get annoyed with him, they just kick him out of the synagogue. They just discard him. Or Judas, when Judas comes back, when he realizes what he's done, he's just full of guilt. "I have," he says, "betrayed innocent blood." And he takes the 30 pieces of silver in his pocket and he gives them back, or he throws them back, and he say, "What is that to us? That's your responsibility." What else for that? These are the judges. These are the guys who run the police, run the courts. Now that's like our culture, isn't it? Our culture is opinionated and judgmental. These things have a corrupting effect on society. Like these people, popular wisdom condemns the innocent. So what is the received wisdom today? It's pro-choice. Pro-choice. Thousands of unborn children are the casualties. Our media, because of its contempt for truth slanders and slaughters people's reputations with no thought for them. People's lives are dragged through the gutter. I don't know if you saw this little clip on David Robertson's blog of a schoolboy who in his class argued or discussed that there are only two genders, male and female. He followed this argument in a discussion. And was first of all kicked out of the class for expressing that view and told you cannot say that. And then subsequently, because he recorded it on his phone, he was excluded from school. That's our culture. That's where we live. And it creates hatred and division. We are part of a disintegrating society. Unborn children, elderly people, demented people. You're not allowed to say this. Jesus says to you and me, you are the salt of the earth. We are to be distinctive. If you had known what it means, if you had known these words, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. Do you see the implication of that statement? It is. This is what it's saying to me, Kenny. If you simply rely on your own judgment, you will condemn the innocent. My judgment will let me down because my heart's evil. When I try and suss things out and sum them up and decide who's right and who's wrong, I will get it wrong. So what this means is, for you and me as Christians, endeavouring to be salt of the earth, we must be those who always err on the side of generosity. Is that how you make your judgments? You know, we'll always cut somebody some slack because we know what our hearts are like. Because we are prone to condemn the innocent. We'll be giving people the benefit of the doubt. I love that little incident where Ananias told to go and speak to Saul of Tarsus, he's just rolled into town. He's come to town with a reputation that he's a bit of a violent man. He's just there to wake people off to prison. And Ananias kind of sticks his neck out when he goes to him and he says, "Brother Saul." Now that's cutting somebody a big bit of slack. And the Good Samaritan finds the Jew on the road. He doesn't spend his time saying to himself, you know, this guy was a bit stupid travelling at that time of the day. I don't think he should have done that. Look at him, he's on his own. Look at how the mess he's in. Just shows him mercy. Is that how you make your judgments? He says, I desire mercy. Sacrifice. That's what Saul looks like. That's the preservative. We're going to do one more. Chapter 9, back to chapter 9. 9 to 13. On the page. We'll do it okay for time. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? So Jesus here in the sermon is calling for involvement. The salt, I think probably something like this, salt is meant to be in the meat to preserve it. It's not meant to be a salt cellar, it's meant to be involved. The light's meant to be on the stand so that it gives light to the whole house. That's the pictures that he's using there. He's talking about people who are involved in society. Now, I don't think you need to think too hard about this, but I think our 21st century society lacks community. Uptown or downtown doesn't really make much difference. Strangers are viewed suspiciously. Maybe rightly, but they are. Strangers. Neighbours are maybe people who pass your gate or get in their car. But here's Jesus, and he's eating with strangers. You know, it's a great little picture, isn't it? While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came to eat with him. Just sit down. Now this involvement attracts negative reaction. You see, why does your teacher? The light goes on, boom, shielding their eyes. Nobody's applauding. It doesn't lead to approval, rather than the other, at least in the opposite direction. But the light shines. On hearing this, Jesus said, "It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but those who are ill. Go and learn what this means." And there's the words again. I deserve mercy and silence. Let me give you a little illustration. Rosario Butterfield is a pastor's wife in Durham, North Carolina. She's written a little book that's kind of got a subtitle, Radically Ordinary Hospitality. Radically Ordinary Hospitality. No doilies. No recipes. Okay. In May 2016, one of the houses in her street next door to her became vacant, and they were praying about this, and they got a new neighbour, and the new neighbour's name was Hank. She says, "He was not the neighbour we prayed for, but he was the neighbour we got." Okay. So they go around to welcome him, and she takes bread, takes a card. She says, "The Butterfields are really pleased to have you living next door." Hank responds by removing the door handle and disconnecting the bell. Got the idea? He didn't cut his grass for 3 months. Now, I don't want to be unkind here, but this is not Pilgrim. This is suburbia. These people worship their gardens. Hank has a £100 pit bull called Tank that runs amok in the street. The Butterfields are praying that they'll get to know this guy. And over 2 years, they're gradually getting to know him. The dog ran away. They go and help find him. They learned he'd been in the military. He would never come into their house, but he would sit in their yard. They discovered he had exactly the same birthday as Rosario. They shared birthday cake, and they had Thanksgiving together. Then, one morning, Rosario gets up early, wakes up, looks out the window, and sees these burly guys with big vests that have DEA on them, Drug Enforcement Agencies. They see Hank being led out in handcuffs from his house. He has been running a meth lab in his house. And boy, are the neighbours furious. Not just furious with Hank, they're furious with the Butterfields. At this point, they've got a choice. Do they pray Luke 18, "Lord, I thank you, I'm not like other men," get their heads down and have nothing more to do with it? Or do they shine? That day, they invite their angry neighbours into their house, which turns out to be a little bit more awkward than I thought, because apparently when you open a meth lab, I didn't know this until I did, everyone has to get in their houses and shut their doors, because it's nasty stuff. So there they are, shut in their house with a bunch of angry neighbours. Neighbours are saying things like, "Hey, you ought to know better than this." One man says to Rosario, "You know the trouble with you Christians? You are so open-minded, your brains are falling out." She said, "Can I tweet that?" But as these angry neighbours are in the house, they determine that they're just going to do what they do normally. So this is a kind of Reformed church. They just sing the psalms and read scripture. So they say to the children, "Get the Bibles out." They make coffee and they start passing Bibles out. And she says, "We introduce Jesus into the discussion." And they started to listen to the mercy of Jesus speaking into this situation for a moment. Now, people didn't praise them, they didn't applaud them, they didn't say, "Oh, thank you so much for that." But some people heard the gospel. Every Thursday, they just open their home. You don't have to book, you just come. And every Sunday, they say to people at church, you just come. She calls it radically ordinary hospitality. The light shines. Now, I guess most of us would not feel that that is something that is manageable in the context of our lives, but yeah, there's something there, isn't there? Engaging, speaking to, welcoming the most unlikely people. I'm going to finish by just saying 3 brief things. 3 little kind of take-homes perhaps to go with you. First of all, number 1, follow the Lord. So the disciples have got front row seats, and they're going to follow Jesus in his ministry, and they're going to see the light shine. Now, that's not open to us. Jesus is not here. We're going to follow him Monday morning. How are we supposed to do this? Jesus said this, sanctify them by the, he prayed this, sorry, he didn't say it, he prayed this. Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. How do you and I follow Jesus? Answer, this book that you've got open in front of you is what will bring about the distinctiveness in our lives. It's a relationship with his word that produces right contrast in our lives. So here's, in the pages of this book, we discover what righteousness, the righteousness we're hungry for, looks like. He says in chapter 5, verse 20, unless your righteousness exceed that of the scribes and Pharisees. The scribes and Pharisees are minimizers. So they tithe their herbs and they neglect the weightier matters of the law, justice, love, and faithfulness. Disciples are to be maximizers. We do not settle for just not murdering people. We deal with our anger. We don't settle for just being faithful in our marriages and not committing adultery. We deal with the lust that lurks around in our hearts. That's his righteousness. You go with Jesus. Follow the Lord, because that's where he's going to take you. Secondly, see the love. Maybe you can remember this. Tell me if you can't remember it. When Andy was talking to us at the beginning of the year, we were thinking about Mary and Joseph. Do you remember? He said of Joseph that he was a righteous man. Joseph was a righteous man. So when he discovers that his betrothed is engaged to his fiancée is expecting a baby, a righteous man, what does he do? He resolves to divorce her quietly. This is the kind of righteousness that a lot of us know all about. You go, whoa. Nothing to do with that. She's down as goods. Nothing to do with that. Take a step back. Stay out. Go to Jesus' trial. Pilate's wife sends him a message. Have nothing to do with that righteous man. I have suffered much in a dream because of him. Pilate follows his wife's advice, gets a bowl of water, washes his hands, and says, hey, I have nothing to do with that. But what about the truly righteous man? What's he doing? He's going in the other direction. He's stepping in to sweat, tears, blood, betrayal, darkness, desolation, voluntarily for you and me. Jesus goes in this direction. He steps into our mess. That's the righteousness that we are interested in. See the love. Ask God to open your eyes to see, oh my goodness, that is beautiful. That is beautiful. I have to love the light. to see the love of another. And finally, turn towards the light. We make progress as Christians not by making some kind of massive change of direction. Well, clearly conversion is a massive change of direction, but for us as Christians, it is mostly small steps. So I just want to ask you, as you go away today, just ask yourself, what is the one thing you're going to do as a result of being here today? Just get in your head something that you're going to do, right? Maybe it's the way you respond to people who annoy you. Maybe it's in terms of your own judgment, that you're not going to go with your own judgment just like that, because you know you'll condemn me in a sin at some point. Maybe it's in relation to how you use your home. Make a small step. Move in one direction. Because if we're not doing those things, hey, we're useless. We're useless. Salt that tasteless is useless. Light that doesn't shine is useless. Christians who do not involve themselves in these